Today, I had the privilege to speak with Cory Steuben, who is president of Munro Associates Corporate Strategy, has spearheaded massive growth for the company, and most notably for those of us on the outside, has created the Munro Live YouTube channel, which, by the way, just passed 300,000 subscribers. Cory has a broad knowledge base in several manufacturing disciplines, is a frequent speaker at large shows and venues, and has helped secure clients and investors in his time at Munro Associates. He holds a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering from Kettering University in Flint, Michigan. Today we had a chance to talk about Tesla, the new Model Y with 4680 battery cells, Rivian, IDRA with the Giga Press, what the future Tesla Robotaxi is going to look like, and even what Munro Live is going to look like in 5 years. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I am very, very privileged to have Cory Steuben with me. He is president of Munro Associates Corporate Strategy, has spearheaded massive growth for the company, and most notably for us fans, has created the Munro Live YouTube channel, which, by the way, just passed 300,000 subscribers, right? So congrats for that. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a big surprise for us. The meteoric rise of the YouTube channel has been really nice.
Cool. And your bio goes way, way on, so I'm going to leave a link to that plus contact information for you in the bio, in the description, so people can just check it out. And that. So Cory and I had contact before this, but the first time we met in person was during the kind of cyber rodeo fest, whatever that was, like 3-day event that none of us quite remembers because it was so big. But I remember that the two of us kind of had like about the same amount of fame, I guess. But then there was Sandy, who was just like an absolute rock star. It was absolutely insane watching how people reacted to him there.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
I remember when we first chatted, it was in the VIP area of TeslaCon.
Right.
And what was really unique about that, just like you were saying, there was a crowd around Sandy, but for people who couldn't get to Sandy,
right,
they would see you or me, and they're like, "Oh, you're the guy who's with Sandy," or "Oh, Dr. Know-It-All." So it was like fame by association or within reach.
Right,
and,
exactly.
Yeah, and I also, there was a media member there, Alan Root from Barron's, and he was at TeslaCon reporting, and he texted me. He's like, "Hey, where are you?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm in the VIP area." And I said, "Oh, I can get you up here. I know the organizers." So I grabbed, I think it's Anwar Beck.
Right.
And I got him a bracelet, and he came up and he did a little bit of interviewing up there. So that was unique being at that event.
Right. Yeah, that was really cool. I, as many people know, didn't actually get into the cyber rodeo, sadly. But the TeslaCon thing was amazing. Yeah, it turned out that those tickets were an awful lot harder to get than people thought they were going to be. So, but anyway, the first absolutely burning question I asked my Patreon patrons, I was like, okay, so what are the questions you guys want to ask? And the burning question was, how do you guys manage to look so good when you're working in a teardown facility? In fact, I actually upgraded my dress. I'm wearing like a golf shirt today. So just kind of a joke, but I don't know. Is that like a corporate thing that you just want to make sure that you look,
Our dress code was actually more strict early on in my career at Munro Associates. And I was an intern back in 2005 through 2010. And I remember ruining dozens of pairs of khakis and dress shirts because we always want to have an air of professionalism. So although when we are doing heavy duty teardown, we can put on coats, oftentimes, we balance between being really professional engineers and then we don't just want to have a teardown shop look. So we've actually relaxed quite a bit over the course of the past decade or so because of me. And I know I happen to be wearing a white button-up today, but I had a couple really important meetings, and I needed to look a little more spiffy. But I'd say Sandy and myself are more of a polo and khaki type of environment now.
Right. That's cool. Yeah, it's mostly the fact that every time I even touch a car, I get grease all over me somehow. And I was like, it's magical that you guys seem to. I'm sure that's just all hidden behind the scenes or something like that.
It is, yeah.
So, cool. So I guess the big question to start with is just to kind of back up and I mean, I don't, how did the idea of tearing things down and, you know, this kind of stuff for a living sort of come about?
Yeah, I'll give you a macro overview of how Munro and Associates has evolved to where we are. So,
Right.
in
Well,
the
I mean, with you, I mean, that would love
yeah,
that too, but I also want to know about you as well, like from your
okay,
childhood. So, but I mean, no, either way, give both to me.
yeah. So Sandy Munro essentially started the company in the '90s, consulting, like old school hired gun.
Right.
Come in, tell you what I think. We had no teardown facility. It wasn't until 2001 where we got our first large facility where we could do some of this work. And benchmarking is an integral part to understanding, but it's not the most important aspect to understanding. That comes from the expertise of all of the people that we hire.
Right.
And a lot of times we get compared to our competitors, which primarily do benchmarking, which is the collecting of a pool of data, and then they'll sell the pool of data. We don't sell a pool of data. We sell solutions and the answer. And and that's Munro and Associates as a whole. So for years, for decades, this benchmarking and advice that we would give would happen behind closed doors and behind NDAs.
Right.
And no one ever knew or saw. If I told you how many Ford Duratec V6 engines I tore down back when they came out in like 2003, 4, 5, I mean, it's almost a dozen, but they were all for different clients. So now we found a little sweet spot where we can acquire a Rivian or a Texas-built Model Y and tear it down, get the benefit of the exposure on the YouTube channel. And I cannot tell you how many sales leads open with, hey, I saw your video on YouTube. I'm so-and-so from company X. We make this part. Do you have a report on these parts? And it translates to a $20,000 sale, a $100,000 sale, a $250,000 project. So the benefit that the YouTube channel has to the company is just beyond it's beyond believable right now. And now we have a phenomenal team. So we have Eric, Zach, Aaron. So we have 2 videographers, a graphic designer now, and an intern from Harvard reached out.
Jeez.
Yeah, he's actually awesome. His name's Josh. I won't give his last name. I don't know if he wants any privacy, but he's a mechanical engineering student that watched the show, but he has a lot of expertise in videography and production and audio. Wow. And he's like, hey, can I intern with you? So our Munro Live intern, we were able to attract a Harvard-educated intern, which I'm pretty proud about.
That's very impressive. I'm also quite jealous because I do everything myself. So I'm like, man, it'd be nice to have a team. I think when you started, it was just you, right? I mean,
I got to give credit where credit's due. It was myself and Tyler Schlink, who is an engineer, but he played in a band. So he was really in tune with recording, audio equipment. He knew how to edit the audio really, really well. And arguably, he's still our best audio guy. So he would handle editing the videos and the audio back during COVID times. And then we had another guy named Scott Hoffman, who he handled a lot of the directorial elements. While Sandy and I were handling, CEO and presidential duties, he'd be standing by our Model Y we were tearing down and scripting out the episodes. So those 2 individuals are still employed at Munro and Associates, but they've shifted back to their very important and critical engineering roles. Right. Tyler, I think, struggled with it because he was having so much fun with the Munro Live stuff. And I don't know if he misses it or not, but the 3 of us.
Gotcha. So it's interesting because it sounds like it makes perfect sense that the kind of thing that you do often requires an NDA, which means you can't go like, oh, we tore down this vehicle X, and you can't advertise that to the world. And so therefore people don't even know what you've done. And so like you said, like they keep coming to you and asking the same thing, but also you don't get the exposure. And so the YouTube channel allows you to get a huge amount of exposure, and obviously. So but the investment cost is very high for us. So let's say we were doing a project with client A and they wanted us to tear down Rivian,
they would pay for the Rivian. We
Right.
wouldn't. They
Right.
would also pay for all the effort to tear down. So we're talking a minimum of $250,000 for us to acquire a car, disassemble it, and map it in our software. And that amount of money is no small amount.
No.
And we have to really think about the cars that we choose. And oftentimes our fans are like, we want Sandy to see a Lucid. We want a Hummer. We want a Lyric.
Like,
We only have so much bandwidth. We're not huge. We have
Right.
roughly 100 employees. And the max we can handle is about 1.5 to 2 vehicles simultaneously.
right.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, yeah, but I mean, it seems like it does make it a more economical situation for even the client too. If they're interested in something and you've already got a report done, you can amortize the cost over a bunch of clients instead of just one client.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So now tell me about you. Like, what was it that's made Cory, like young Cory, go like, I want to tear down cars, or yeah.
So I'm actually from Nebraska originally.
Okay.
I grew up in a normal suburb in Lincoln, Nebraska, and my father was a mechanic. He was a diesel mechanic. So at a young age, I was exposed to tools and working on cars, and I would go to work with him and whatnot. And he's been, an amazing, father figure to me. And we also had race cars. So I did dirt track racing in Nebraska from the age of 10 to the age of 14. I drove for 4 years. And my father and I did all the work on the cars. So at the age of 11, 12, and 13, on a bi-weekly basis, I would completely rebuild a KT100 or a CR125 dirt bike engine in my garage. I would hone the cylinders. I would get a new Wiseco piston with a gold ring. I would do it myself because in order to be competitive, if you've ever had a 2-cycle engine, you have to continually replace the piston because you'll wear it out and all sorts of stuff. And I would, anytime I crashed my car, I would repair it myself. And by the time I turned 15, I had my own job, and I did not want a crappy car. So I had saved up my money. I actually worked at Burger King from the age 14, 15.
There you go.
And I bought a 91 Nissan Maxima. Loved it.
Pretty sweet car, actually.
Yeah, it was called a 4-door sports car. It was 4D SC, and it was red, sport edition. And I did all my own. I paid for it. I paid for it. I did all my own maintenance, and the engine blew up when I was 16 and a half. So I got an engine from a junkyard. I replaced the whole thing myself in a half of a Saturday. So I always had this huge inclination to kind of be like my father and work on stuff. But my dad always said, Cory, don't be the guy who works on the cars. Be the person who designs them. So, huge into Legos. And I would always, compared to my brother's an amazing guy. His name's Joel. I was way into Connects and Legos and building stuff. And I could repair any small engine. So I kind of knew I had this mechanical inclination. So I applied to Kettering University in Michigan, which is known for their co-op program. So at Kettering, you're able to work half the year. And the value of being able to work half the year to someone like me who had kind of had to make it on my own. My parents did not pay for college. They did okay, but I've had to essentially make my own way in life. And I went to Kettering, and that's when I got a co-op at Munro. When I was 18 years old, I have only written one resume. Think about that. I'm 35 years old, and my resume still says AP Spanish on it and like Run Club from high school.
I remember those early resumes where you're trying to fill up space. You're like, oh gosh, how do I get a page look?
But I've been told at that job fair, there was about 100 people that applied for Munro. And they decided to interview 2 people, one of them being me, and the other guy didn't show up. So you could say, you just got the job because the other guy didn't show up, but I also beat out the other 99 people.
Yeah,
And
so there you go.
I've been told that the reason I got the job is because I put on my resume privately commissioned automotive repair, which was a guise for all the work that I had done for myself and my friends for money. And, you know, at an early age. So what better job for me to have than to work at Munro Associates, where we're constantly tearing down not only automobiles, but tractors, rice planters, skid steers,
Right.
a dozen military projects that I can't even mention.
Right. Yeah.
And building up that level of expertise early on in my career as a co-op, and then for 7 to 8 years as a consultant, means that when I either consult on the phone or when I lead the people at Munro Associates, I at least have the context of the jobs that they're working on, as well as the struggles associated with it. And
Right.
fast forward to today, the Munro Live thing was really born out of necessity during the pandemic, because
Right.
we used to rely on dozens or hundreds of customers in the area visiting our amazing facility to see the parts and pieces in person. But I'm the one who pushed, like, we can disseminate this information on the internet, and it's proven to be, like I mentioned earlier, wildly successful.
Yeah. Yeah. And even it sounds like it's kind of changed a little bit of the way the entire business for you works, because it's not so much a one-off each time. So
Correct.
that's yeah, it's beneficial for everybody. I actually and I Lance told me this, and I'm sure it's on the video, but you know, you also consulted with Cyberlander, for example. They're in Austin now, and they're building a camper for the back of the Cybertruck, and he said that you guys like just laid out the entire factory. So it's not just teardowns and stuff, but you also do, if you want to move from here's your prototype to now you want to make, you know, 500 of these a week or 1,000 a week or whatever it is, how do you do that? So that's another whole part of the business, right?
Yeah, I don't want to speak specifically to the Cyberlander
No,
because
it's fine.
I'm not familiar with the terms of any contract or NDA. I do know that we're out in the public with that, but I don't know. But yes, we have a very strong manufacturing background, and we have 3 to 4 phenomenal manufacturing experts. One of them, his name is Mike Tracy. He's one of like the most world-renowned manufacturing guys. Tim Shaw and Jack Dombovsky, and also Garrett Doyle. We have a team that's all they do, and they have, many of the more experienced ones have been in every type of plant you can imagine. They know every type of machine, every problem there has been, every problem you need to solve, the utilities, the labor necessary, the maintenance. They are like walking manufacturing encyclopedias.
Wow.
And our software as well, it's called Design Profit, that Munro develops internally, allows us to map out entire assembly lines. And it's one of our some of our crowning achievements are helping out clients for full redesigns of their vehicle and their factories, like the club car Precedent, the golf cart. That was a 1.5 or 2 year project that we did for Ingersoll Rand. And we essentially took them from 30% market share to almost 70 to 80% market share. And the plant was so efficient when we were done with it that they were able to build them in an old storage warehouse that was tiny. And their old massive plant was no longer needed because of how efficient the new vehicle was designed.
Oops, sorry, you're breaking up just a little bit, but hopefully there. So that's amazing, Luke. So basically, these guys are so good at what they do that you are able to just like completely redo businesses that have already existed and make them even better than they were. So yeah, that's impressive. I noticed that your email address, of course, I think for everybody there is leandesign.com.
Yes.
And so that really indicates the focus of the company.
Yeah. We actually own the trademark to Lean Design.
Right.
And the reasoning behind Lean Design is actually those 2 words everyone can spell. no one can spell Munro right. We've seen it Monroe, Monro with an E.
Right.
And it was my idea to launch and buy MunroLive.com for our merchandise store. Originally, I actually purchased it with my personal GoDaddy account. So
Right. Yeah, you told me that when we were at TeslaCon. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. We have a it's a registered trademark now. Munro Live is, which costs like $4,000 to do, by the way. But anyways, we now have MunroLive.com because the Munro name is now easier to spell because of the reach that the channel has gotten. So,
right.
Lean design is a core aspect of what we do, and that's how Sandy got started. And we offer lean design training and lean design certification, but frankly, it's a small part of what we offer.
Gotcha.
That's what Sandy was doing when he was in Italy. He went to Italy for the better part of 10 days, and 5 of the days he was conducting lean design training, exactly how he would have done it 20 or 30 years ago. And it's still relevant for any client, any industry. And there's a portion of it called hearts and minds. And Sandy likes to say, and Munro, we like to say, it's 10% technology and 90% psychology. So if you have a product, and you're trying to move it, you really have to win the hearts and minds of the organization. Otherwise, no changes will ever be made.
Interesting. So it's kind of an inside out thing. You have to change people's minds, and then that flows from it. So very interesting. I've been looking at lean design and also at Joe Justice and the whole agile and all of that is they seem pretty associated with each other.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I actually watched. I didn't quite finish it. I ran out like 5 minutes before the end of the IDRA video, but I was watching that prior to like getting on with you. And what does, number one, that 9,000 ton press is just ridiculous when you see somebody standing next to it. It's just huge. But what is like what they're doing there tell you about the future of car manufacturing? I mean, Tesla was clearly very critical to making this happen because they were the ones who asked originally to do, was it a 6,000? But like the really big die casting machines. But so what do you see for the future of manufacturing due to the fact that companies like IDRA are making these ridiculously large machines now? Yeah,
the first thing I want to do is separate Tesla from my conversation about our visit there, because our visit was just because IDRA, I don't know how to pronounce it, they invited us. And I just got to say, I got to thank Fiore and John Stokes. They were tremendous hosts. They hosted Sandy and I for 2.5, 3 days. They arranged our cabs. They took us out to dinner. I mean, it was a really nice visit.
Wow.
But in the factory, it just blows your mind, the scale of these machines. And for years, decades and decades, there are manufacturers who make these machines under 6,000 tons, and pushing the envelope where you now go from 6,000 to 9,000, it opens up so much opportunity for simplification. And there have been people out there that claim that a giga casting of that size, regardless of OEM, will reduce the body shop up to a third. Now, you still have to replace the body shop, all your stamping presses and welding robots with this large casting machine, the furnace, the transfer lines, all sorts of other ancillary equipment.
Right.
And what really comes down to is, can your throughput match your production? So, getting the cycle time down in the area of a minute, now you're matching the speed of the assembly line for final assembly. So essentially, most plants will put a car out every 45 seconds to 60 seconds. And if the machine is taking 120 seconds, you need twice as many machines, and then it becomes less valuable. So almost more important than the capability of the machine is the ability to match throughput. And that's something that's kind of overlooked. So the fact that a machine that large can output castings that fast is more impressive than just the scale of the machine.
Right.
And the reason I mention that is if it took 5 minutes per part, it would never make sense because you would have to buy
Yeah.
one, two, three, a huge
At least
amount
5.
of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So that is one of the things, like when you actually see these things in operation, and I don't know that I've ever seen one from Tesla itself, but I've seen other ones, and it's just kind of like bang, bang. They're just like popping these things out, and it's incredible to watch how quickly they can do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very impressive. So, okay. So yeah, so I mean, obviously that is critical, that it sort of matches the flow of what's going on. I also noticed with things like materials and stuff, and weirdly enough, incidentally, the most popular video on my channel ever is the IDRA video. It was like over a year ago that I did it, but everybody just ate that video up. They loved it. So,
what'd you do on that? Did you cover
it was when they talked about the original Giga Press that they were using for the front and back casting for the Model Y.
Oh.
So not the larger one now, but the other one. So yeah, I think I just caught it before anybody else had really done a video. IDRA did I think they did a walkthrough tour where they talked about it, and I took little pieces of it and talked about what was going on. So anyway, it's very, very popular.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, but anyway, the other thing about it is just materials aspects, right? Because you have to inject something in a liquid form, crush it very rapidly, cool it very rapidly, so it's a solid before this thing opens back up again. And so there's a lot of these material state changes that are happening really fast.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, and you said crush it, but really it's flow the material through the mold fast enough so that it doesn't solidify in spots that you don't want it to, so that you can fill the whole chamber without any voids or porosity. And that's the challenge. And there's amazing mold flow tools. By tools, I mean like software packages that allow you to model what molten aluminum or whatever look like as they're flowing through the through the potential mold. And and we have our Texas Model Y up on the lift. We've done a couple videos, and seeing the size of the castings is incredible, because the Model Y we tore down in 2020 had the split castings where you had one on the left, one on the right. They were connected in the middle, and then the rear crush cans were extruded aluminum. Now the one we have today, the rear crush cans are integrated into the Giga casting.
Wow.
So seeing that step change improvement is quite impressive.
Okay. And I was actually just going to get to the 4680 teardown next. I noticed you were having some immense problems getting the top off of that. Did you ever succeed in getting the top off?
So we underestimated the effort it would take to get that cover off. So the two edges were thinner metal without any stiff structural pieces. So we were able to essentially peel it off by putting a tremendous amount of pressure and peeling it off, just like you'd peel off the cover off a lid for yogurt, right?
Right.
But the stiffness of the seat structure, which looks to be high strength rolled steel, is so stiff that we can't get the peeling action to propagate. So now we're dealt with, our current strategy is drilling out the welds carefully. So here, when you're drilling,
you've got high voltage batteries.
And some people have been questioning the safety. The first thing we do before we touch these vehicles is we'll drain the battery all the way down by driving it, get it to nearly 2%, and then we have sophisticated equipment that costs tens of thousands of dollars to then drain and pull the battery down even further. Then when you take the high voltage componentry off, the battery gets split in 2 or 4, so you go from 400 volts or 350 down to 165 each section. So as you start progressing your teardown, it becomes safer and safer because the charge is down. I just want to highlight that.
Yeah, I'm sure you take a lot of precautions.
And then, so we don't want to put undue stress on the pack. So we're very careful and calculated. You don't just start going at it with a chisel or pry bar. And because of that, it's taking way longer. And we decided that a hot knife would work better. And there's some industrial hot knives that will cut through the polyurethane and we ordered one as fast as we could, but we're waiting 2.5 to 3 days for that. It's supposed to have shown up this morning. So if you're releasing this tomorrow,
Right.
that'll be today. And ideally, we have the cover off by close of business Friday, and we can do a video on Monday of next week. So it's about a week delay. We just didn't know. But this is a positive. So if you're sitting there and you're watching this and you go, well, what is this? What does a structural pack mean?
Right.
All of the effort and energy that we're taking to try and peel that cover off means that is the force that can be transmitted across that pack when it's under torsional load, shear load, and it's I almost call it like a brick of concrete. It'd be like if you poured concrete and the batteries are rebar. Like that's how stiff it is. It's wild. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's the kind of thing where you could imagine building a multi-story building out of this material. It's that stiff.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating. So I did notice that when the little preview video that you did that was like, hey, sorry, we haven't got it off yet. I noticed that up till where the seats were was what you peeled off at that point. So that was where it got stuck. It's also good to know that the seats are that stiff too in terms of safety, because that means that they're not going anywhere in an accident. It's not like they're just going to peel off the top of this pack.
No, absolutely not. And the seat structure, we did a video on that. It's similar in geometry and shape, but they've actually improved that quite a bit. And if you look at the seat structure that was in the old Model 3 and Model Y body in whites, they're a very similar shape. They're cross-car rolled, formed steel, and that's not uncommon. It's common, on most OEMs do stuff like that.
Right. Okay. So, yeah. So it's just the other part about it, of course, from watching the first video was the fact that you can just unscrew, I think it was 38 bolts or 40 bolts, and just lift the entire car right off the battery pack and seats. So I talked to Scott Walter, who's like a factory engineering, big time guy. And he was like, wow, look at what this does for the working productivity, because you no longer have people or robots like getting in, in weird, awkward positions, trying to bolt things together. You can stand up, put the stuff together, drop it on top of this thing and drive it off. So,
yeah. And I mentioned on Twitter, I tweeted out that we were going to do an ergonomic assessment of assembling all of the other components before the battery gets installed. So I've spent a lot of time in manufacturing plants for Fiat Chrysler automobiles. And some of the most difficult assembly operations are overhead. So when the vehicle is above you and you're installing exhaust shields or screws or aero shields, overhead work is bad from an ergonomic perspective. And then when you have to climb in the car to awkwardly assemble the trim on the A pillar and the B pillar, the carpet, the instrument panel, reaching in, because you're in the car, you're crouched over. And now with removing the battery and the floor, if you're installing the trim, the Tesla could have the car at a certain height where you could have an employee walk in, and then they could reach outside the car and grab a piece of trim and do it at standing height. That is a huge improvement from the inside the car ergonomic. And we were gonna try and do an assessment of that, but then our problems getting the cover off kind of made us forget. So
we can go back and do that eventually again. So. So it's interesting, because I think a lot of this comes down to a person driving the car off the lot, the Tesla, showroom. They come pick it up. They're not really going to notice. The real crucial part is that, again, that's that lean design. It's like fewer parts, easier manufacturing, safer manufacturing, faster manufacturing. It's just like you can roll these things off so fast.
The way that they will know is only through two things, or one thing. If the vehicle is now lighter, meaning the net gain is a reduction in weight, that means you get more range, less tire wear. Even if it's 1 or 2% of the weight, that will be a perceivable improvement in the user experience. And people won't know, oh, like, well, how do I have more range?
Right.
So Tesla could have done something crazy. We'll find out. This is a hypothesis.
Right.
the reduction in weight because of the elimination of the floor and whatever could have been let's say 2%, and that may have given them 12 more miles of range. They could have then went to the battery and reduced the number of cells in there by 1% or 2%, to then make sure the range comes back down. So when we get the cells out, we count the cells, we're able to analyze the cells, we'll then see what type of decisions did Tesla make, that all the benefit that was gained from reducing weight and improving range potentially, did they then give it back to the customer or give it back to the shareholders? Because when you give it back to the shareholders, the lower cost the battery, the more profit margin. So we are tasked with really digging deep into those types of decisions that would advise you know, not only our viewers, but other clients.
And that's, I mean, that's, and honestly, they could compromise and they could give a little to each, right? So if, say, they reduced it by like 4%, they could give 2% back to the shareholders and 2% to the customer, right? So you could do a little bit of both. It's not an either or kind of situation.
Yeah, and sometimes those decisions are near impossible to unravel, and it'll just be interesting to see what we find and what hypotheses we can draw.
Right. So very, very cool. I've heard rumors about the fact that they've actually really underrated the range of these things, and that they actually, through software updates, may upgrade them at some point anyway. So that'll be interesting to see as well, that these standard range, because I think, is it like 275 miles is the rated mileage for the standard range now? I think something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So, but you know, if suddenly it goes up to 300 miles through a software upgrade, you could go like, oh, okay. You know, because they're new batteries, so they may be kind of under promising a little bit because they don't want to go too crazy.
I honestly think it's improvement in chemistry. So you're always innovating in the design of the batteries, the cells. So if your chemistry is improving by 10 or 20% year over year, or 5%, you can release a vehicle and now you have better chemistry if you buy a 2021 Model 3 versus a 2018. It's going to be better. So that improvement I forget what the effect is called, but if all the new Model 3s and Ys have way better range, people will then stop buying the current model year and they'll wait for the new one. So Tesla has the luxury of...
the Osborne effect. Osborne effect. Yeah.
So if they can't ramp up and satisfy the demand for the new one, they can release the new technology with the software. Once again, I don't know this for a fact. I mean, it's not uncommon for someone to do that.
Well, and it seems like what they've done is very cleverly, like if they'd released one with the 4680 batteries that had 350 miles of range, nobody's going to buy the Fremont ones anymore. They're going to be like, oh, I don't want to buy it, because they'll have the Osborne effect. So what they've done is they've kind of like under-delivered, and they're like, yeah, you can buy this, but it's got less range than the other one. So they're kind of balancing the demand for each model.
Yeah.
So,
they are.
It's very, very cool. So let me ask a couple of, I guess, bigger picture questions. But number one, so you guys tore down, the Model 3 was the first Tesla you tore down in 2018 or 19 or something along those lines.
That's the first Tesla we tore down publicly. But our team had torn down the earliest Model S's and the refresh Model S's and Model X's. So so when we tore down the Model 3, that was a public teardown. But we have context that goes back even further to the CAFE standard development with the United States government. We analyzed a Ford Fusion hybrid, Priuses, Saturn Vue with a belt start generator. These are all mild hybrids. You know, and they do have complex battery systems, electrical motors, and whatnot. If we had to roster up all of the EVs and hybrids that our team has seen on all the projects, private and public, the list would blow people away. We just can't. We can't. say that.
Right. You can't say all those
yeah.
things. Where do you have the storage space, by the way? Because you'll just pop out and go like, here's a 2020, like hose from the Model Y, and you're like, where'd you get that thing?
Yeah, we scrap the majority of our projects. So we have a 50,000 square foot facility, which is rather large.
Right.
And we can display at any time, I would say, 6 or 7 full vehicles, everything in them. So we keep the most relevant pieces and parts. And we tore down a Chevy Bolt back in 15 or 16. We got rid of almost everything from the Bolt, scrapped it, scrapped the whole thing. Somebody came, got the body, and we recouped some money. Why not?
Yeah.
This is America. And because of that, nobody cared about the Bolt anymore. It was an old design, not a very good design. We did keep the batteries and the motors. So we'll keep the motor and the battery from everything. We once had close to 20 engines on display, internal combustion engines.
Right.
And it took up a large area. And you're talking all Ford, GM, Chrysler, everything. And it used to be of a lot of interest, back in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. No one cared. We got rid of all of it. I mean, it was an entire dumpster filled with engine blocks and transmission housings.
That is one heavy dumpster.
for recycling.
Yeah.
So your question is, what do you do? Most of it ends up being processed through the building.
Right.
And we're struggling with space right now.
Yeah.
And because we have a Mach-E on display, a Plaid on display, a Rivian is currently being torn down, and the Model Y is being torn down. We have 2 other vehicles being torn down I can't talk about.
So you've got 4 current models being 4. Wow, that's a lot of space just for that.
Yeah.
Wow.
But we have it. It's a lot of space.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So but I guess so the original Model 3, at least the thing that we saw, and then obviously the earlier models that you had seen, you all were not particularly impressed with the manufacturing quality of those vehicles, if I'm not mistaken.
And
so
this is what we think happened. So we tried to secure 2 Model 3s back in 2017 as they were being ordered.
Right.
And we couldn't get one, and the one that we got, we bought through a broker, which is common for an organization to buy through a broker. And the vehicle that we got, I believe the owner already owned 2 or 3 other Teslas. So our hypothesis is it was sold to a loyal Tesla person, and I think the organization assumed they would keep it, and we got it.
Right.
And they wanted somebody real pro Tesla to get it, which would be a loyal customer of theirs. We got it. And unequivocally, the fit and finish, paint quality was not good.
Right.
It just wasn't good. And the standard that the whole world has, like GM, Toyota, Lexus, like if you buy a car, it's not even a question. It's going to have immaculate fit and finish. It's something that the major OEMs have perfected because it's important. It's really important. And it just wasn't there. The taillights, the trunk was all crooked, and it was like the car was hand built and poorly shimmed and aligned. Now, I was supporting another client, and I came over, and the organization, Munro, we were kind of like ho-hum about the teardown. Well, we took the frunk out, and I saw the super bottle at the time. So this is pre-octovalve. I saw it, and I looked at it. Now, I mentioned all the other teardowns we have done. I had torn down no less than 24 mild hybrids, so hybrids. And the thermal systems on early hybrids were amazingly messy amalgamation of off-the-shelf components. And when I saw this super bottle that looked like the heart of a human with the pumps and the valves. So a heart is pumps and valves.
Right.
I saw two pumps and all the valves and all of the arteries going everywhere. It looked like a heart. It was emulating anatomy. I literally almost fell over. I called, look at this. And some of our engineers who didn't have the context, they thought it was nice, but they didn't realize how groundbreaking it was.
Right.
So that's where our tune started to shift. Is although we factually the vehicle had a horrible fit and finish, and Sandy was interviewed a bunch, but the super bottle was amazing, and now the super bottle is extinct.
Right.
Because the octo valve and heat pump has replaced it. So
right.
We have our super bottle here, and 10, 20 years from now, there won't be that many in existence because it was only the first 2 model years of the Model 3 which had them.
So, and that's amazing. And I think that's part of it. I was going to ask you about the progress, but you already answered that question. It's just that you get something groundbreaking, and then a year later it's gone already because it's like, oh, we got something even more groundbreaking, like we'll just replace this thing.
Yeah.
So you would think most other manufacturers, if they came up with a super bottle, would have been like, that's it for the next 5 to 10 years because we'll go through several major model cycles with this. So it's very cool. So I don't know if you can talk about, I definitely want to at least hit on the Rivian as well and your teardown and your thoughts about that versus, I guess, the Tesla. And I don't know if you've torn down any Chinese-made cars yet, because I'm very much in the camp of Sandy and maybe you as well, that the Chinese is going to be the biggest competition when it comes to electric vehicles. And maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to be, from my point of view, that's the case.
So I can start with the Rivian. Okay. The Rivian is a phenomenal vehicle if you are a customer of Rivian. And what I mean by that is when you buy the vehicle, you are getting a lot. You are getting an amazing amount of functionality, features, and quality. So here's some of the early stuff we're finding. Subtle things like trim panels to adjust the seats, like you reach down on the side of your seat to adjust your seat position. It looks like a piece of art. It's a painted piece of plastic. The plastic has this beautiful feel. The buttons then have this beautiful metal inlay. And I mean, it's just like, wow. And if you buy a Mercedes or a BMW, that's the type of level of quality you see. If you look at the tonneau cover, which essentially is standard on the R1-T, very well built with these large springs and robust rollers, and the vehicle, like the R1-T, could have launched without that and with the basic switches. And if you just look at those two things, our team is phenomenal at costing. I think they wanted to lead with something that was just going to be shockingly good and amazing and feature rich. Then we tear down the powertrain. 4 motors. 1, 2, 3, 4 gearboxes, 2 double inverters. Just the sheer amount of magnet material, the number of laminates. Even the Plaid has 3 motors, not 4. This thing has 4. But then what you get...
Speaking of laminates, I noticed both of us have the little laminate
things. There it is right there.
Cheers. Yeah, so anyway, that was a very cool thing. Sandy signed that one. So, but I mean, you're saying, so they even more, it sounds like it's an incredibly, maybe not over-engineered, but an incredibly engineered piece of technology.
Yeah, and then the architecture is kind of confusing to us because it's a body on frame. So it's a body on a frame, but it's hard mounted to the frame, which is highly unusual. You look at GM, Ford, Chrysler, they isolate the bodies from the frames, and then the shock towers are integrated into the frame, and then they have cradles. So usually cradles are reserved for unibody vehicles. So like if you buy a Land Rover, it's a unibody aluminum body, and they have these really nice looking cradles. We studied them a lot with castings and extrusions. So then you look at the geometry of the suspension. The mounting points for the geometry are very far inboard. And what that does is the further inboard, the longer the arm is. And when you have a longer arm versus a short arm, you can get a higher travel on the outside. And it's less of a stressor on the joints of your CV axles because all four wheels are driven. All of these decisions drives a tremendous amount of cost because the longer the arm, the stronger it has to be. And I think all of their suspension arms are forged aluminum. So when you look at the suspension, it looks like you're looking at a Lamborghini or a Ferrari.
Right.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. And then the brakes are huge, painted Brembo brakes. Now, this is an EV with 4 electric motors that can contribute to your braking. Did they really need huge, beautiful Brembo brakes? And so my statement stands. If you have one of those on order and it's 80 grand, you're getting way more than $80,000 worth of vehicle. Now, we don't have the exact cost, but that's what our team does. But I think there still is a lot of promise for Rivian because there are a lot of people who want an electric vehicle that want a lower trim level. And if they can figure out a way to offer a more pared down version of it, same styling, decent, capability, I think there's a market for that.
Yeah, it seems like I haven't heard anybody say that the Rivian itself is bad. It's just the fact that how are they going to stay in business because it costs so much to make it. So it seems like that's the major question for Rivian at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. So turning from them to the Chinese, I don't know if you have had an opportunity to look at any Chinese cars yet or not.
I have. So Sandy and I went to the LA Auto Show. We went to CES, and then we went to EVS 35 in Norway, all of which had a lot of Chinese cars on display. And we were able to look at their architectures, their battery choices, their motors. And if I had to address the Chinese EV market as a whole, I would say that they are doing a good job, but they're in no way, shape, or form leading. I think BYD has a really good plan with the Blade battery, but their older platforms are basic. We currently have an Imperium SEV. It's like the 20th ranked Chinese vehicle. It's in our possession right now. And we were going to start tearing it down, but we got the service manual for it. And we were able to see the motor and battery architecture. And I would say it's behind where the VW MEB platform is.
Gosh, wow.
But it's decent. So when you look at the Chinese EV industry, where they're gonna kick our butt is cost because they have figured out battery manufacturing. So and the entire Chinese government, backed by the Chairman Xi, has really pushing for the top 10 or 20 Chinese auto manufacturers to succeed. And it's not like 20 or 30 years ago where Sandy said he would go look at a Chinese car and they were copycats and bad copycats. It looks like a Range Rover, but it says like Land Ranger or something. And then inside, it's bad welds and poor material choices. That's no longer the case. These vehicles can adhere to Euro NCAP and FMVSS standards. So they are making vehicles that are saleable in the U.S. and Europe.
Yeah.
And Sandy's real aggressive with saying Chinese are coming.
Right.
I think that it will be a factor in maybe 3 to 8 years, but they're going to start in Europe. It's easier for them to start in Europe than in the United States, in my opinion.
Okay, that's interesting. So, I just have a couple. I know you got to go pretty soon, but I have a couple more questions here, kind of more about the future. But this was actually credit to one of my Patreon patrons who asked this question. But what do you expect the Robotaxi, the Tesla Robotaxi, is going to look like? Specs, build quality. I have a certain idea in my mind, but I'm gonna you go for it. Like, what do you think this thing is going to look like when it comes out?
So I'm going to start from a more boring macro level perspective. Sandy and I disagree on this. So in my opinion, I think the only way for it to be viable is to take their existing platform and deploy it as a robotaxi.
Okay.
Because creating a brand new structure, so shape, form factor, body, introduces a new assembly line, new validation, and all of the data that they have been collecting has been from the sensors and the form factor of a Model 3 or a Model Y, S, or X. And I think it's very critical that they maintain that sensor position, sensor suite, and data collection, because they would have to collect a new set of data, which oftentimes I value the data that they have collected as more valuable than the physical hardware that's rolling on the road. So it's easier for them to take a Model Y and remove the steering wheel and maybe slight changes to the interior, but the incredible engineering that has gone into the Model Y, 3, S, and X to pass FMVS 226, the IIHS tests. Why would you completely abandon those form factors to make it maybe a little more comfortable if it looked like a weird bus or an orb or something?
Okay.
And disrupt the very well defined and refined vehicles that already exist. So I think your question was, what do you think the robotaxi is going to look like? Yeah. I think they're going to deploy a Model 3, S, X, or Y like fleet of vehicles with slight changes to the interior.
Right. And so maybe like, just making it a little more durable because it's going to have passengers getting in and out, things like that. So that's interesting. But I like the idea of the sensor suite being critical, because every time you change even by a couple of inches where those sensors are, that's a whole new data set, because all of a sudden everything's slightly different.
And all that data has been collected based on the mass of the vehicle too.
Yeah,
so
that's true too.
How quickly it stops. So if the vehicle is different, there's more factors if the battery is different, the center of gravity is different, how it reacts will all change. So I would think that they would want it to be as similar as they can be to one of their 4 existing platforms.
It's going to be a boring world in a few years. Everything's just going to look like a Model 3 or Model Y. So,
I don't know.
That's interesting, because in my mind, my idea was a shrunk down Cybertruck, that they would do a stainless steel, no paint, try to make it as absolutely easy to build, fast to build as possible. One motor, indestructible. You can scratch the hell of it. Nobody cares. So
I would bet you a steak dinner on that, but I've already lost 2 bets to Sandy in the last 3 years. So I'm 0 for 2, no bets.
You never know. You might have better odds against me. Yeah. We'll have a virtual steak dinner. How about that? We'll put that on the line. I know that's kind of out there because steel is a rather expensive ingredient to making cars. So, okay. So let me ask you one more question. This is just totally out there, and you can answer it very quickly or get into it if you want. But getting a crystal ball out, if you could look forward to 2027, what are Munro live videos going to look like then? What kind of cars are you going to be tearing down? What's going to be the big things that you discover about these cars, half a decade from now or so?
2027, crystal ball, let me think.
Yeah.
I hope at that point we are at 600,000 to 800,000 subscribers. On a bad year, we get 100,000 subscribers. So, wow. And what that means is we're going to start to actually open up to other industries. We've had a tool manufacturer reach up. They make power tools, and we're in the process of agreeing to do a teardown on these tools that have electric motors in them, because they feel like their culture is very similar to Tesla. It's an American-made tool brand that has very high quality, and they have motors and controls in there. And we want to see how our viewers react to that. We want to get into maybe the electric motorcycle space. So currently we're doing just cars. We're going to start to tear down. There's these new generators packs that are packs of battery cells. We may do power walls. The reason we want to get into that is we want to contribute to this shift to green. So battery powered anything. And so you asked what it looks like in 2027. We're not going to go backwards and start reviewing, internal combustion engines or anything. And then once again, every year we'd hope to do at least 2 of the leading EVs, and we want to let our viewers speak. So last year we took a poll. We said, what do you want to see, a Hummer or a Rivian? And everyone voted Rivian.
Yeah,
So we spent the money and bought a Rivian. And the videos aren't doing that well. So they're getting 50,000 to 80,000. A couple of them got 100,000. So we really haven't cracked the code to draw on the same type of viewership to non-Tesla content. And we do not want to be a Tesla channel. We're not a Tesla channel. We're an unbiased engineering firm. So part of the reason we did the Mach-E and the Rivian was to remind the public that we look at all things with an equal, unbiased perspective. And if when the Cybertruck comes out, everyone knows we're getting one and we're doing it. We are.
Of course. So
we surprised everyone with the Austin-built Model Y because it was really ambiguous as to how you could order one. So we really didn't order one. We were just waiting until they started popping up, and we were able to really quickly slide in and get one.
You said it was somebody in Florida, right?
And we did it the correct way. We were able to pay. Munro paid for it, and it's registered in Munro's name, and we have it. And that in 2027, I hope we have a slightly bigger audience, and we can be a trusted source for people who want to understand not just EVs, but maybe some other consumer products, electric bicycles, EVs. And the reason we're starting to introduce more and more people on the channel, I think we've had upwards of 15 or 16 figures, Carl, Sue Smith, Nikisha, myself, we've had Nick, all these different great people, is because we want to show the world the type of talent we have. Sandy Munro is our figurehead. He is the voice of the company, and he's almost famous now. When we travel and go through the airport, he gets stopped 2 or 3 times. But Munro Associates is so much more than just Sandy Munro. It is his legacy. His name is on the building, and we want to protect that legacy for not just the next 3 years, but the next 30 years.
Yeah, and as you say, it's a 100-person company, so it takes a big team to be able to do what you guys do. So,
and John, I actually have a question for you, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you a professor at the University of Georgia? Did I read that right?
Yep.
So are you a Georgia football fan?
I am.
Okay. So I was interviewed by Farzad. He has another YouTube channel about I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we ended by talking about college football. And I got a lot of crap because I said Nebraska was going to go 12-0 this year. And I'm serious. And I want to remind your viewers the reason why. Nebraska has the easiest schedule in college football this year. We're not playing Ohio State. We're not playing Penn State. And Scott Frost's team last year had the best 3-9 season ever from a statistical perspective. No coach had ever lost 9 games by such a few margin. I have all this blind faith, and I know Georgia, you won last year. You won the national championship.
National championship,
How long was the drought? When was the last one? 1990?
84, 83, something, 84, 83, something like that. So, before your time even.
So Georgia has 1 championship since 1980, whatever. Nebraska still has 3. And there's a lot of people in Nebraska that just cannot get over the fact that our team is not good. So I need some blind faith, and I'm jealous.
As long as it's not Alabama, I'm happy. So how's that? We can both agree to that.
I do appreciate what Nick Saban has done. The dynasty that he's built, and the pedigree from your coach, Kirby, right? Kirby Smart. He came from his tree, right?
Yeah, he was an assistant. I think it was defense or
Yeah.
offense. Anyway, he was one of the defense offense coach. Yeah. So yeah.
Very cool.
Pretty amazing stuff. So, all right. Thank you so much. You spent a ton of time with me on a very busy day. I know. I really appreciate it. And I hope everybody subscribes to Munro Live. Definitely do that. So bump up their subscriber list and get it to 400,000 soon. In the meantime, have a wonderful day. And I don't know, we'll talk again soon, right?
All right.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.